Hello, good morning all. Today we would be talking about the process of communication. So when we talk process of communication, first let's talk about again what is communication, so that we can understand very clearly again why is it a process, why is it called a process. So first let's understand again as per this point of view of process of communication, what is communication. So today we would be going through is the process of communication. So first let's see what is communication. So when we are talking about communication, when we are talking about the process of communication, again communication is how a person behaves or responds to the other person's words or action. As we all have studied, communication is both verbal and non-verbal. So again, when we are talking about the process of communication, first when we look into communication, it is how we react or respond to the opposite person's words, what the person has told, or the action whatever the person has done. So that responding, again we respond. If we don't respond, would you say it is a proper communication if a person is not responding? No, it would not. Suppose I have told something, continuously I am telling something, but I am not getting a response in the opposite side. So it is not a complete communication, it is one-sided one. So it is again, if it is one-sided communication, it is wrong. It raises several questions. Fine, that what next? So it is a half communication done. So again when we are talking about why is it a process? Fine. So when we are talking why is it a process? Why communication? Why is it a process? Why is communication a process? Fine, communication. Well, we do not communicate, when we are talking about communication, we do not communicate to other person. Again understand, it is a small preposition difference. We do not communicate to, again this is I would say to other person. I would say is we do communicate with. It is the with. We communicate with the other person. See, if we are communicating to other person, it is one way side. We don't get respond. And when we are saying communicating with another person, again the thing is, when it is with is having two people, two parties, might be a speaker and a listener. Fine, a sender and a receiver. So it is a two-way process when we are calling it as with. And when we say to another person, communicating to another person, so whether the person gives the response or not, I am communicating with you. Whether you give the response or not, it is my job, I would speak, I would go. But when I say with other person, it is very clear that yes, I am expecting a revert answer from the other person, so that it is a two-way process. Fine. So again when we are looking into when we are talking why is it a process, it is we are communicating with, and how, let us go into detail about it. as I said, there are various points that we would take care of, that why communication is process. First point that we would take care of is, in communication we have a sender and a receiver. We have sender and receiver. So it is a two-way process. So it is a two-way process, and that's how we know we are communicating with someone. So we are expecting in revert an answer, or even if we don't get the revert, but yes, the action would be taken off. And how in detail we would study about this. Then next point is, we have, second point is message encoding and message decoding. So we have message encoding and message decoding. So again, encoding, it is the person who is drafting a message and sharing it, sending it. And decoding is, again I have to, in decoding a message, the opposite person would read the message, understand it. And it is again, last time when we had spoken, when we had in the last class, when we had understood, every time it is not possible that the message we want to pass, the opposite person understands in the same way. It is naturally they would understand as per their attitude, their mind thinking, and as per their mind and thought process. So again, when we are encoding it, encoding and decoding is not an easy process. We would again further study about this in detail, and how do we make it simple and easier, even that we would. But again guys, when we are looking into all these points, please keep in mind, when we are talking about communication, whether it's sender and receiver or message encoding and decoding, it has to be, we have to follow the same thing. The acronym KISS has to be followed every time, especially in communication part. Then next we have is psychological noise and physiological noise. So psychological noise and physiological noise, what are the differences in it? How would that affect? And what impact does it carry? What impact does it carry in the process of communication? That again we would understand it. See, the word itself says very clearly, psychological noise. So the disturbance, sometimes we are mentally disturbed, someone is speaking to us, but we are mentally not present. I am sitting in the classroom, the class is on, but my mind is somewhere else. And so what happens is, what the teacher said, I could not understand it, or I actually did not listen it. Physically I was present, mentally absent. So in that case again there is a disturbance, fine, and that is psychological noise. Again physical noise, when we are talking about physically, we have the external noises, internal noises. Internal noises come under psychological this thing. In the external noises and other things, in detail we would study further, so that we can understand it in a proper manner. And if you understand this whole process of communication, in many places your understanding would become more better about communication, and when you are thinking about encoding, decoding and everything, you would be fastly able to work on to the things. Fine. And this is very important to understand the whole process. So, please pay attention and listen carefully. There should not be any psychological noise, that internal disturbances. Fine. Yes. So, next when we are looking into, there are even communication channels. Communication channels, when we are talking about, what is communication channel? So, the mode of communication, like as the first point said, we have sender and receiver. Fine. So, through what was the message sent and how was the message received? What was the medium? What was the channel between the whole thing? So, that is again very important. So, that even we would study in detail about communication channel. And the fifth point when we are looking into, it is communication environment. So, when we talk about communication environment, how does that impact? Naturally, I think you all would agree to this point. Environment carries a great impact in whatever we are doing. So, again, communication environment, the external sources, the disturbances, there are various things, various points into the communication environment that impacts, fine, the process of communication. And what is that? Again, we would study in detail further, fine. And so, further when we are looking into, let us now work on to the first point. We will first work on to the sender and receiver, fine. So, again when we are talking about the sender and receiver, sender is the person who is sending the message, who is drafting the wordings. And again, when we are sending it, it is how our mind thoughts are, how we think, like we had earlier spoken. The person who is the speaker would accordingly speak, understanding that the opposite person is even understanding the way you want. Same way, the sender and the receiver, in this case how it is example I would give a small example. A speaker or a teacher speaking in the public, fine, a speaker speaking in the public, that is again a sender point of view. The speaker, a politician or a speaker is giving the lecture, fine, continuous the lecture is, they have all the other thing, coding, decoding, everything being done. For them it is only that they have to pass their message and they are passing it. So, second example is your parents again scolding you or giving you a lecture on to some point. So, again parents, when they are talking to you or when they are scolding you or giving a lecture, you cannot interrupt in between and start speaking. You have to give your justification, but again that is how would that process happen, I will tell you. So, this when it is happening, that is the sender side, fine. When we are talking into the example, it is a politician giving speech, that is an example of a sender, fine. And second example is, when we are taking a parent lecturing the child. Fine, the first example when we are talking about the politician giving a speech. So naturally when the politician gives a speech, do we interfere or do we be questioning him? No. We wait till the whole speech is completed, then comes the receiver, how it is taken. Same way when the parent is lecturing the child, when you are at fault might be this lecturing has happened, otherwise no. So you have to completely listen and then give your justification at the second part. So the first is the sender. Who is the sender? Here parent is the sender and the politician is the sender. Fine. Politician is the sender, parents are the sender. Next, when we are talking about receiver, again with the same example I would tell who are the receivers, who are taking the message. Suppose I have sent you a message. You are the receiver, you will have to read it, you will have to respond it. Might be you have not responded it, but yes, you are the receiver, you will check it onto it, even if you are not responding it. Like I will give you an example, WhatsApp, when we are taking it. Fine. When you send a message to a person, might be the person does not respond, but when the blue tick comes, you understand that yes, the receiver has seen the message. Receiving is different and the receiver has seen the message, you understand that. So please remember this example because that would again make your understanding in a better manner. Same way over here, the politician is giving the speech. When we are giving the example, the politician is giving the speech. So who are the receivers when the politician is giving the speech? It is the audience. Audience are the receivers because they are listening to the public. Audience, the public. Audience and the public, they are the receivers. And the same way, in the second example when we are going, the parent lecturing the child. So again, who is the receiver? Whether he responds back to the parent or not, but he has received the message. So again, the child. So the child is the receiver. So in the same case, this is a process, communication is a process because with, when we are talking about with, communicating with whom? So the sender is communicating with the receiver. It's not that they have no one to communicate. It is the sender communicating with the receiver. So it is a two-way process. So it's not communicating to the receiver, it's with the receiver. Fine. And in that case, this is the example that we have it. Fine. I hope you people have understood about the sender and receiver. We would now go to the second point about encoding and decoding. The whole process about the encoding and decoding, please understand it well. We would now proceed further with it. So now when we are talking about the next thing, message encoding and message decoding. Before that, let's, when we have read about, this is a small topic again, I think that would again help you out. Because when we are talking about sender and receiver, I think communication channel, when we are talking about the second point, communication channel, that would again make you understand easily because we have completed the sender and receiver. So the sender and receiver, when it is, I have sent the message, you have received the message, but in between there is a channel. Between the sender and the receiver, they have a channel, fine, channel of communication. How? Either I have communicated via, what is the mode of communication? Mode of communication is the channel. Mode of communication, this is the channel, fine. So when we are talking about this channel can be verbal or non-verbal. It need not be that every time the speaker is speaking. Fine, when we are talking about the speaker speaking, so that's a verbal channel. And sometimes the message is passed through messages or letter, register, mail, WhatsApp. Nowadays there are many modes of communication. So the channel, what is the mode of communication is the channel. So next we would now go with the third point, which is encoding. So when we are talking about encoding, what is encoding? Encoding is when sender attempts to replicate his or her feelings, I would say. It is okay, let me tell it, we will go further with this, with his or her thoughts or feelings into some kind of external message. Like, what is encoding? It is, I have thought of something, fine, and I have thought of something, I want to put it forward to you people. But how do I put it forward? My feelings, that how am I feeling today? How would I put it forward? It is through encoding it. And how would I encode it? Through the external medium of communication. Because I need to, these thoughts and feelings are internal. I'll have to put it out to you people, only then that you will understand what am I thinking, how am I feeling. But if I don't put it in words through the external communication part, fine. And what would be the external communication? Might be I am speaking it out or I am messaging it, fine. So till I don't do that, it would only be a thought and a feeling. It would not be into, I am not encoding it. It's only internal, so no one knows, and there it ends up. But when I am putting it forward in words, if I am putting it forward in words, then it is encoding it. And when we are looking into, okay, when again I am telling it could be that the person who is encoding the message, or who is encoding the person who is putting it forward to you, and would put it forward what is in his or her mind. So it could be that the person who is passing the message is poor at putting the words forward, because if I have thought it the way I think, I would put it forward. Fine, I'll give you an example for it. Like, suppose I have given some message, I say, that's not how it should happen, or that's not what I mean to say. Fine, I mean to say, this is one. So again, when I am putting it forward, if I am saying this, that's not what I mean to say. So that's not what I mean to say. So again, there is a question popping up in your mind. So what do you mean to say? So exactly what the thing is. So multiple questions again, peep up in our minds because the message was not decoded properly. It was not encoded properly, it was not decoded properly. How? I said or wrote what was in my mind. Fine. But might be first half and the second half I have not excuse me, first half or second half I have not encoded it completely. So in the same way, it is easy for the sender to encode the message, but again it is tough for the person, the receiver, to decode it. So again in this, when we are looking into, there is sender and receiver. Naturally one has encoded it, other would decode it. Fine. That is why communication is a process, because it is two-way. Again it is encoding, decoding. Fine. So we are communicating with the person who is encoding, is communicating with the person who is going to decode it. Fine. And then when we are looking into, now let me tell you few things which I think it is important for all of us to know. There are the person who is skilled, the person skilled in encoding, we call them as encoders they are called as encoders. Fine. So the person skilled in encoding is the encoders. We call him or her. We also call him or her as articulators. We would say is the person is articulating it. What is articulating? See, the person who is encoding it is framing a sentence, selecting proper words and putting it forward to you. So the person is articulating it. So they are articulators because they are articulating. Please remember guys, encoders, fine, encoders, articulator, this is one. The other one is articulating. So articulators, fine, because they are the architecture of that framing sentence. So they are designing the sentence, they are framing the sentence. So again they are articulators, and then we even call them as well spoken because, why well spoken? Because the words which were used were appropriate, the way it was presented was appropriate, and the sentence formation, the word formation, everything was spoken well, with confidence, with proper intonation, with proper voice clarity, with proper sound, tone. So there are many things when it is for encoding it, there are various things which come into. So again when we are talking about the channel of communication, so again when we are, these are all interlinked. So if the channel of communication is proper, the communication is proper. The encoding is proper. If the channel of encoding is proper, only then that the decoding would be proper. If the channel is proper, only then it would be decoded proper. Otherwise, what are the disturbances caused and other things, we would even study that in further, so that could help us in understanding about the channels too in detail. But we have already understood what exactly is the channel, we have understood it, so that we can understand in further when we are studying. But the process goes this way, so please remember each and every point it would help you the best in understanding everything. Fine. And again, if it is well spoken, and even it is called eloquent. So what is eloquent? Even eloquent because it is properly framed, properly presented. So well spoken. So again, in this eloquent, it can be properly present verbally, non-verbally. Written way even it could go. Fine. Spoken and the way you are presenting it. Fine. If my body language is wrong, again it would give a wrong message. So the complete, when it is eloquent, the complete message is in a proper manner. So the person who is good at, the well skilled person in encoding. So when I have to give you a message, it should be an appropriate message, and I have to understand the crowd, how is the crowd sitting besides me, the crowd that I am addressing. I think the right word would be this. The crowd that I am addressing, if I understand properly, the encoding of mine would be a proper way. And if it isn't in a proper way, the decoding, your understanding would even be into a proper way. So the sender and the receiver both would be having a perfect communication, I would say. So the process would be into a proper manner. So now when we are looking into further, we have understood this as how the sender, how the receiver and all goes. But again, there are no relationship between speaking and listening. Like when it is example, when a politician is addressing the crowd, politically they are very strong. What they want to pass the message, let it be any way or every way, they would address it to the public and pass it to the public. It's again how the public takes it. So I have encoded it from my end. I am not concerned about the decoding part. What I had to speak, what I had to address, I have addressed. It's finished. So sometimes it need not be that it is properly encoded. It need not be. Fine. But we know that the person is a good speaker, a good politician, a good speaker, and so he would give the message what he wants to give in his way. He would give a perfect message. Again, it's up to us. We want to understand it, we don't want to understand it. Fine. Then, guys, in such a way, there is a phenomenon of halo effect. Please remember, it is halo effect. Remember what is halo effect, I will tell you. When we are talking about the halo effect is, like as I said, we know, in halo effect it is, we know, we all identify a person skilled in something. Fine. He is very good or strong at one part of work, in some work, and we understand that the person, whatever the work the person does, would be perfect and good. So that is halo effect. A person is good in one work, fine, he is good in one work, his strength is strong at one work, scale of work, and we all assume or take it the person being good at all, I would say, good at all. So, that is the halo effect of the person, that positive energy that the person carries. Fine. The person carries that positive effect at his work, his strength at his work, he is very strong at his work, and whatever he does, he would give the best. Fine, in his strong area. But we all, that confidence of ours goes is, that is the halo effect. Our confidence goes is, no, any work given to him, he will give his best. So, that is again how you have encoded your words. The way you have presented it and how the people have taken it, that again has its own effect. So, halo effect says that yes, we trust the person's work and the person's work speaks. It is not that the person spoke. In this case, the person's work speaks, and that is very important. The person's work speaking. Fine. So, action speaks louder than words. That is one of the best example of halo effect. Fine. Then, next when we are telling about, yes, we will let us even talk about, when we are talking about one best thing, see the best thing of, please again understand it in a proper manner, best thing about human communication, the subject, studies. When we are talking about the human communication studies, fine. So, when we are talking, what is human communication studies? Human communication studies, when we are talking about, we understand the psychology, the social belongings and the sociology of the person, the human values we understand. So, these all things again speaks about a culture, a human, and that is again passing a message, that is again coding a message to the environment, to the public. So, in encoding, if we are talking about, we have human communication studies. So, human communication studies like public speaking component. Public speaking component. So, what is public speaking component? Apart from the writing component, it is not only that public speaking component we would have, we would even have the writing components, because even in this the human communication studies, it is how a person is communicating, even like suppose I have mailed it, I have mailed or written a letter to the PM or to the CM, but how did I put forward my concern or whatever matter that I wanted to put it, the way I put it is very important. If my language is not proper, even in writing or speaking, it would not have its effect. So, when we are talking about even the good speakers, like with whom about halo effect, even when we are talking about some good speakers, the politicians and others, communicators who talk about, when we are talking about them, again they have that public speaking component, because they have that strong points to attract the public, because the right words were used. Again short and sweet, but the right words were used, and that could easily touch the heart of the people, the feelings of the people, the thought of the people. And that is very, very important, that people understand what we want to communicate. The whole lecture I complete, but if what I want to communicate, if you do not understand, I think there is no sense in continuing this lecture, because the main motive is that you understand, but if you are not able to understand, it is not decoded properly. So the encoding was not done properly, that it could decode properly. So the sender did not send the message properly. Short and sweet is understood, but again it should be into the understanding language. I was told short and sweet, and so I spoke like this. But why only the half message given? So again the public speaking component says is, when you are addressing people, please whatever you want to say, address it with confidence, with positivity, and presenting it in a perfect manner so that it works out well. Fine, whatever message you want to give, it passes. And then in addition to writing component, again it is, we have English, history, psychology, I would say even, etc. again are related only to writing. Again, why only, how only to writing, why only to writing when we tell? Writing because, see, history, it was created, it is already created long back, that is why it is history. Now whatever we are knowing is about the history is all written, which we understand it and study it accordingly, so that we understand and know about what had happened, what was the reason for this to happen. We could study the culture, the ancient methodology, and even today how the things are going on. So again history, sociology, again about the culture and other things that we study, it is all more into written than spoken. Again, okay, spoken is there less comparatively, but mainly it is based on written communication. Fine. So again, when we are talking about the human studies, these are all the human studies that help us in understanding how, what messages has to be passed and how we have to pass a message into a positive manner. Fine. So human communication is very important, so that we understand how to communicate with our people whom we meet in daily basis. How we communicate, what is the best way to communicate with them, so that we can encode our message in a proper manner. Fine. Then when we go, let us even consider about what the research says. Fine. There is a research, as per the research, so as per the research, when we are talking, over 90%, fine, over 90% of the personal officials, fine, of the personal officials at communication skills play a vital role. Fine, they play a vital role, like as per their study into the 90% of this, then as per the US what they have studied, they have given it is that oral communication plays a vital role. Then the written communication, compared to the written communication. So when we are comparing it to oral and written part, fine, oral communication is more effective and working when compared to written. So when we are encoding it or decoding it, sender or receiver, it is more of the oral communication that works than written. People through writing or this thing, they communicate less, more is spoken. Like even today, if we are taking example, if you want to tell someone something, instead of typing message and telling, it's would he understand in a proper manner or not? That is first thought that we would get. If it is something very important, best call him, minute it would take, tell him. So it's again oral communication, because in return again when we say, it's how you assume the opposite person, how he takes it. So it is accordingly. Fine. So now when we are taking it, next when we are understanding it, oral communication is more important. Then let us, I just want is understand one cycle that we have. First is feedback, which sender, message and receiver. So when we are talking about encoding, this cycle again is very important. The feedback, sender, message, receiver. So there is a feedback sent by a sender. How did the person send? Through a message, and it is received by the receiver. Again, it's how he takes it, that is the feedback. Fine. So this is whole the cycle that goes on, and there are various barriers and other things that would come into it, which we would study further about, so that we can understand the whole cycle, the sender, message, receiver, feedback. Again feedback, sender, message, this thing. So anything when we are taking it, this whole cycle is connected. This whole cycle is connected, and it works accordingly. The whole encoding or sending, receiving, whatever it is, the whole game is played like this. Fine. And what are the natural obstacles even that would come, we would again study further. Now when we are talking about, let us have message decoding. Message decoding. We have studied about encoding, now we are studying about message decoding. So when we are talking about message decoding, how does it occur? Who has encoded it has passed the message. It's how you take it when you are encoding it, the way you read it, the way you understand it, fine, the way you think about it. So it occurs when the receiver attempts, to ascertain the message, the meaning of the sender's message. In fact, the message, again the meaning of the message, what the sender has sent it. See, again, as the other day we had discussed, it is not required the way I am putting it forward to you, you people understand it, I know what am I saying, but what am I going to talk about, I know it and I will talk accordingly. It is not necessary the opposite person again decodes it or understands it how I have put it forward, but again I have to put it forward in that way, encode it that way, that the decoder understands it, how it has to be, what would be the perfect meaning of the sentence, what is written, what is told, spoke. So again, what the speaker speaks or what the parent has lectured the child has to understand the main meaning behind it. If he understands it, his result would come out accordingly. But if I have not, the encoder did not give a proper message, Like example, I am giving this example because when we talk about few things, we quickly understand. Suppose a parent is scolding us for some complaint came from college or school that your attendance is not proper, or your examination you have not performed well. In fact, you are an intelligent student, but you have not performed well. So when a concern is shown, and when they have got the complaint and when they are giving it back to you, when they are giving the lecture for that to you, and in between they come out with their own personal problems. So would you understand what exactly they want to convey the message? No, because they had their own points in between, multiple things were told all together. So that is again beating around the bushes and not conveying the proper message. So when you are encoding it, don't beat around the bushes, give a proper message. So when decoded, fine, so when decoded, the receiver receives it appropriately, understands what you want to convey. Otherwise, it would not be properly decoded or understood. So again, it is half done. Fine. There are several factors. Okay, again then there are many times that we get frustrated because what I wanted to say you did not understand. Fine. Sometimes we get frustrated because someone what they told we have not understood it. So these are all the way the lack of communication that we have, and lack of communication again is a factor that we would say there is no proper encoding, decoding, sending, receiving. So again the process is somewhere half done. Fine, the process is not completely properly followed. As communication is a process, we are communicating with someone. So both sender and receiver are from two different mentality, two different thought process. Fine, so again it could change. Then why is it important, how is it important, and how would we work on it? Fine. So we will proceed further in understanding the factors creating disturbances in proper decoding. So have a nice day. Let's end up the class with this. Thank you.